Good morning, Paul and Bhargav. It's Thursday, the 30th of March. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 18 issues. North Asia, we covered 6, and for the Australasia and Pacific Islands, we covered 5. In South Asia, we covered 19 issues, plus the major issues in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa regions.
Okay, excellent. Uday, go ahead.
Great. So China's threatened retaliation against Taiwan if Taiwanese president meets with the U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy this week. The Taiwanese president is in New York yesterday. She has been on a tour of some Central American countries to shore up support for Taiwan after another country switched diplomatic relations in favor of China.
It's going to be interesting to see what that retaliation involves. I think the meeting's almost certain, so China's obviously planning something. Just once you see what that is, let me know, please. Give me a call.
Yes. In Papua and Indonesia, the West Papua National Liberation Army burned residences in Gombe District in Punjab Regency in the Highlands. The military has also been conducting operations in Induga to rescue the detained New Zealand pilot, but there's not really been much progress made in this regard.
Yeah, look, I mean, ultimately the TPN-PB are doing a lot to ruin the name of all Papuans, yet they're at absolute maximum 50, but probably no more than 25 or 30 absolute madmen. It's hard to believe, and obviously you can draw a lot from what I'm saying, that a very mature, well-funded military with incredible amounts of air resources can't turn these guys off. I mean, just the principles of having mobility, lots of forces dominating the high ground and getting to these areas with appropriate numbers and being trained, committed, and having commanders do their job and soldiers be loyal and commanded well. I mean, it wouldn't take much to defeat these guys. This is not a political movement. It's a crime. It's a crime gang. So whilst, Freeport's doing well to manage their scenario and keep this out of there and offer deterrence, the Indonesian government, after 50 years of fighting the OPM, suddenly to have all these issues with the TPN-PB, has to question its own capacity, capability, and what is the distraction? What is the political distraction for government officials? What is the political distraction or other distractions of the military leaders? Thanks.
Right. Also in Indonesia, well, this just came out, but FIFA is finding another location for the under-20 football World Cup. It will not let Indonesia host it over the anti-Israel protests. This is after the Bali governor had said the Israeli team would be banned from playing there, and other governors and politicians also took similar lines. Some officials also claimed that there was security and terrorism threats if the Israeli team visited Bali.
Okay, thank you.
In the Philippines, authorities said that they will resume talks with China about a joint oil and gas exploration project in the South China Sea. The technical level talks are scheduled to begin in 6 weeks.
Okay, thanks.
In Thailand, there was a high-profile defection from the ruling Palang Pracharat party yesterday. A former deputy interior minister joined the Phua Thai opposition party. Before being in the Palang Pracharat party, he was in the Bunja Thai party, and before that, he was in the Thai Lak Thai party, which is a former Shinawatra party that was dissolved in 2007, if I remember correctly.
And look, I think we need to have a separate meeting and draw into what is the strategy that's underlying this. I mean, on the surface, the Deputy Interior Minister, Suchat Tacharon, is who I'm assuming you're talking about. His defection is an indicator, okay? It could be an indicator that the Thaksin side of the ledger is getting stronger and key people are seeing the weakness in the Palang Pracharat Thai party. I think there's more to it than that. And I think we need to have a separate meeting offline to draw some analysis. I don't think we've got enough of the jigsaw puzzle yet. I'm on the way to Bangkok next week to have some meetings, but we do need to start looking at the various scenarios and indicators to monitor where it's moving forward post-election, okay?
Great, we'll start drawing them up forward.
Thanks.
In Papua New Guinea, the government recently obtained US dollar 918 million loan from the International Monetary Fund, for which it has to amend tax laws to increase income and corporate taxes, amongst other various conditions. The loan is to stop Papua New Guinea from going into bankruptcy and liquidation, and it will support budget and infrastructure development in the country.
So this is very interesting. Meanwhile, I mean, we're in the process of writing about the various sharing arrangements that the PNG government wants to introduce, and our outlook on that is a very negative one, because simply the size of that market and the maturity of the government to actually manage it won't preempt that report for clients. But this is another indicator that the PNG government, particularly the one at the moment, the last thing it actually wants to do is have accountable government to the people of PNG. It puts up a wonderful veneer about its credibility. The reality is it's not governing. It's not doing what a government needs to do. It's not passing bills that are good for the country. It's too hung up in playing tribal politics and each man for himself, and the greed that's associated with that kind of mentality. So it does not bode well. And the fact that the IMF's having to offer a loan that have so many strong strings attached is a massive indicator that PNG is very close to a failed state, because it just simply can't be trusted by a lot of investors, and it's setting up policies to make that more difficult. Thank you.
In South Asia, in Pakistan, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the opposition party led by Imran Khan, has called for protests across Pakistan tomorrow. This is following the disappearance of a social media activist of the party near Imran Khan's residence in Lahore last week. His party is blaming security forces for the disappearance. Protests will mainly be concentrated in major cities, including Lahore, Rawalpindi, Multan, Peshawar, Karachi, and possibly Islamabad.
So the protests are likely to continue, as Imran Khan and his followers are quite tenacious. They won't let it go until they see some developments in terms of getting rid of the current government led by PML party. However, the government itself is unlikely to relent until Imran Khan is behind bars or disqualified from the elections. So we will see a worsening situation in terms of security landscape overall. Fortunately for them, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is keeping out of all of these scuffles, probably because of Imran Khan's sympathy towards them and his intention to resettle them in the mainstream.
And what if he gets executed? What will happen, Bhargav, in your view?
Paul, this will lead to loss of credibility for the current government as well as the military, like we saw back in 2007 when Parvez Musharraf was forced to resign. And I do not think they are going to take that risk again. The military has learned its lessons, and they're keeping an arm's length, letting their decoy, that is the current alliance of PML and PPP, take the reins of the civilian government.
I hope you're right. Excellent analysis. Thank you.
In India, the Election Commission announced that the Karnataka Assembly elections will be held on the 10th of May, and vote counting will be held on the 13th of May. This is one of the biggest elections ahead of next year's general elections.
Karnataka is an important state for the ruling BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, which is in power in the center and in the state. This is the only state in the southern India where they have their government in place. Other states have regional parties. And if they lose Karnataka, they will lose traction in southern India. However, security is not a major issue in the state ahead of the elections, except for communal tensions along the coastal districts, specifically Mangalore. Karnataka is very important in terms of industries and economy as well, with an economy of close to $300 billion.
And why is the election held on the 10th and voting on the 13th? How's that work? I mean, it's a very unusual thing to have a 2-day rest in between. What's the logistical challenge or the political reason or the old law that dictates such a inefficiency in getting the votes out?
Well, with most elections in India, Bhargav can jump in before. With most elections in India, the votes are never counted on the day itself. It always happens week or days after. I'm not sure exactly why, but Bhargav, we jump in.
Paul, it's mainly to do with the logistical challenges involved in the expanse and the population of the state, which is close to 70 million. And this also may reflect the security preparedness around the voting machines and the voting booth. The actual voting may take place on the 10th of May, but the vote counting and the results will follow in matter of less than a week. So this is basically to ensure there's enough there's enough objective overview of the entire process. At least that's the government's narrative.
Okay, thanks.
Also in India, security has been increased at the Golden Temple complex in Amritsar and Punjab. This is over speculation that the Sikh separatist Amritpal Singh may surrender to authorities there. However, this remains unverified at this point. He appeared in a video yesterday calling for gatherings on the 14th of April, which is a holy observance for Sikhs.
This will be very critical for the current security situation in Punjab. If he does come back into Punjab, this is an indicator that the protests as well as the following will increase. Punjab is in a very precarious state. It has not turned into a full-scale insurgency like we saw in 1980s and the 1990s. However, this is also a test of the Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab, their resolve in terms of security preparedness and law and order. Punjab police have stepped up to their credit. However, they were unsuccessful in tracking down one key individual. So that says a lot. And the BJP government, which is actually an opposition party in the state, is keeping an arm's length from the entire fiasco. And that shows they're just waiting and watching because central forces have not been deployed, which actually means the state forces have had the situation under control, but it won't take long for the situation to devolve further. And I should also clarify here, this is not a Sikh versus Hindu issue. This is largely a political issue as well as a radicalization issue as part of a small section of Sikh community in Punjab, and not a Sikh versus Hindu issue as it is usually projected in the media.
Great, those are really good points, Bhargav. Lastly, in South Asia, the Bangladeshi government has planned to open an international bidding process for companies to operate in the country's offshore blocks. This will be in a production sharing basis. The country has 24 offshore gas blocks open for investment.
Thank you, Uday.
Moving over to Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Rumors of a suspected coup in Burkina Faso emerged last night after there was gunfire in the capital. The military said they shot at trespassers near the presidential palace, denying the rumors. We've released an alert on the issue and are monitoring it closely to update plans for the operations there.
Thanks for that.
Okay, so is it still unconfirmed?
Yes, Paul. Still on.
Thank you. Sorry, Bhargav.
Thank you there. So we will keep a close eye on this. There are competing interests converging on Burkina Faso specifically with the Russian involvement in picture. So please keep us updated.
Yes. Speaking of Russia, Russia's ambassador to Sweden yesterday said that Sweden's joining NATO made Nordic countries a legitimate target for Russia. This is as Ukraine has admitted that Russia is making progress in Bakhmut. And the head of the Wagner group said that the battle has caused significant losses for the mercenary group, but more for Ukraine's military.
So Putin's warnings fall on deaf ears in the West. He has been warning about this for a long time. He has warned this about Finland as well, but Finland and Sweden have thrown caution to the wind. Fortunately for them, Erdogan has resisted such entry into NATO till date. So we'll have to see if the West continues to be as callous as they always have been. Paul, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Putin and his foreign minister in particular, they've been very clear, very concise. They've been very forthright that going way back to 2014, that it's unacceptable. Interesting today, listening to the BBC International News, they're all on about propaganda that Russia's currently sending out media to ready its people for nuclear war and desensitize them for nuclear war, but they're not bringing up the West's warmongering and the use of NATO, which is fundamentally meant to create peace, to in a manner that's created an existential threat and forced Russia's hand. Now, people may sit back there and go, hey, you can't condone Russia's actions. Look, the way they're acting in the war is not ideal, but they were invited to the war. They had no choice. And the increasing expansion of NATO and Europe's jockeying and the warmongering in America, and no one looking for a peaceful solution and everybody looking to stir the pot. Obviously, there's agendas there that wanted a war. They've got a war and they're making it go on because they're not trying to solve it. And obviously, we're writing a lot of reports about the reasons for that and what it means. But ultimately, what it means is unless you're one of the hierarchy in the key wealthy families in America, then it's going to hurt you because the economic impacts to everybody's awkward. And when you look at the combination of the Ukraine war and then global shutdowns prior to that, and because of COVID, and then chucking cash at it that created inflation, and then the impact that the inversion of the bonds and various other financial mismanagement by all these international so-called bipartisan international organizations that are all headquartered in America or Europe. Clearly the situation is very perilous. And, you know, at the end of the day, Sweden and Finland and all the other organizations, all the other countries are looking to join NATO. They're making their bet. They've hedged their bet. They're assuming ultimately America and NATO and Europe's going to get its way. Well, I hope they're right. Thanks.
Great. Lastly, Saudi Arabia's cabinet approved a decision to join a China-led security bloc called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This is a political security and trade alliance that has China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and one more Central Asian country as full members, and various observer states also.
This is very interesting. China is increasing its footprint, strategic footprint at that in the region. They recently concluded a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So I see this as a retreat by the all-powerful Uncle Sam from the region and entry of China in a big way into Middle East. This is possibly a very positive move on China's part. Middle East is a hostile area. Chinese have a tactful way of diffusing such hostilities among neighbors. Hopefully, this will actually work in the bigger picture of the Middle East.
Look, I think it's also interesting that there's 4 observer states, and that means they're interested and they've basically stated they want to accede to full membership. That includes Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia. There's also 6 dialogue partners, including Armenia, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and I think Turkey. And this is very interesting because not only is that growing as an association projecting China's ability to push back, but it's also being conducted while Russia and China hedge away from US dollars. They're giving an alternative for countries to utilize other currencies to get energy and key minerals. And they're also establishing a second path for international banking, which is taking away one of America's major tools of hegemonic power, and that's channeling everything through American SWIFT banks and setting up payment systems that involves America having transparency over everything. So that geopolitical issue is now irreversible. And obviously the size of the Chinese economy on a purchasing parity basis is already bigger than America, and it's projected to be bigger on a purely nominal US dollar amount within a few years. So we're living through the shift from America being a hegemonic power to America suddenly going to have to deal with it's one of 2 superpowers. And really, they're probably 10 or 15 years behind that. They're still trying to manage things like they're an insurmountable power, and that's going to have impacts to every one of us on this globe. Excellent briefing today. Thanks, Uday.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Barbara.